Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. My name is Art Jones. I'm the founder of the Art of Standing Out, where we use brand storytelling to help you market better and sell more. And today we're in the Story Cafe. And here in the Story Cafe, we talk to interesting people that have accomplished many interesting things, but mostly for salespeople. Because on the menu today is selling by being more of who you already are. Now, if you think that that's kind of an interesting entree, stick with us because this menu is really going to be tasty and delicious for you today. I have my guest, Denis Champagne, and I have to tell you, I met Denis, as we all are meeting everyone these days, in a square on a Zoom call. And I said, that's an interesting guy. I want to know more about him. And I have to tell you, after we had a one-on-one, I knew the true depth of his well of knowledge. And today we're not going to get all of it because it's just a sampler. But Denis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Art. I really appreciate this invitation.
Absolutely. So, I promised everybody that we're going to give them a sampler tray of the wealth of your sales experience. And I know, you've trained thousands of people. Tell them a little bit about your experience and who you are.
Well, Canadian, born and raised in Canada, in Ottawa, French Canadian, and been 30 years of self-employed. I was a pro athlete before that, and an entrepreneur. Always have been an entrepreneur. Worked with inventors and innovative products and all kinds of people who are interesting. But in the last 30 years, I've owned my own call center, trained over 1,000 people of my own staff over the years, and then went into communication, marketing, corporate presentation, kind of strategic PowerPoints and macro media. And in the last 15 years, I've really focused on helping companies generate high quality leads in the C-suite as a lead generator, but an expert in prospecting and focusing where the decisions are made in the C-suite. And in the last couple of years, I've decided to coach and give back what I've learned over time.
That's fantastic. And, earlier we were talking about, without sales, there is no business, no matter what business that you're in. And without prospecting for business, there's no revenue. And prospecting, people think of Willy Loman, from The Death of a Salesman and the ABCs of sales: always be closing, always be prospecting, and how hard that is, and how much rejection people feel they have to prepare themselves for to be good in sales. And when I talked to you initially, you said, no, Art, it's not about rejection. It's about something else. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that the paradigm shift that you offer, I think is important, because it becomes rejection's all about me. And your perspective is it's not all about that at all. It's about something else. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, obviously, I learned very early, back 30 years ago, when I was on the phone with someone that I was calling on to. We were doing fundraising, and the gentleman was kind enough. You could tell that he has had many decades of good business acumen. And he said, just remember that the person's reaction is your attitude. And I said, oh my goodness, how profound that is. And I realized that we are not detached from our environment. We are part of the environment. So that what we create often is something that is not resolved within ourselves. So it has everything to do with your profound change in your way of thinking and approaching things, which will eventually create an impact and a response from others. There's a difference between a reaction and a response. So you create that response or reaction from someone. I'll give you an example. A doctor gives you a medication. He says, I'm happy to see that you're responding to the treatment. Or you'll say, well, I'm going to have to change the medication because you got a reaction. So reaction is negative, response is positive. It has nothing to do with you. If you're reaching out to prospect a client, or prospect a company and an individual within that company, and they hang up the phone on you, it's not rejection. He doesn't even know you. So don't take it upon it's all about my own umbilical cord and it's all about me. If you're coming from the perspective of servant leadership and selling, because selling is an act of service, and prospecting is not ABC always be closing, it's ABC always be connecting. And when you take that approach and you take that kind of compassionate approach and you care about your career and not just a sale or a one transaction, and you're into the long ride, then you'll say, okay, well, he just refused. Big difference.
I've got a button over here I could push, and it just has applause because that is valuable perspective, because it's paradigm shifting. I talked about Willy Loman and that moment where they're really talking about always be closing, and that was kind of one of the really tough parts of that, because you knew that if you didn't close, you're going to lose your job. Always be connecting is a whole different perspective, and it does connect you with the mission more in the servant leadership way, that I'm here because I have something of value and I want to connect with you to assure you get the value that I offer. And it makes me think, there's a lot of R.O.I., return on investment is something we all have heard. There's another acronym that's R.O.A.R, R.O.A.R, return on authentic relationships. And if we enter sales thinking more about R.O.A.R, and if we roar, we'll get ROI for our customer. But it's return on authentic relationship that you really begin that way. So thanks for that, Denis.
Yeah. Thank you for the new word, R.O.A.R, because you must have the courage of a lion to be happy in life. As I told you, I practice Buddhism, and we talk about the roar of the lion in our prayer to transform our sufferings into victories and benefits. Something that I had never heard in any religion or otherwise, or spirituality, about benefits. Life is to have benefit being happy, being strong, becoming physically strong, mentally strong, intellectually, spiritually strong. When you develop those qualities, prospecting doesn't come that difficult anymore. And when you do connect with someone and they say, well, I hadn't thought about that particular issue, but yeah, sure, I'll have a 15-minute call with you. You won, right?
Yeah. That's, I gave you a new word, roar, and you gave me a new way to see the word that I've used for a long time, the lion roar. Because I've internalized the return on authentic relationship as being the essence of that. And you put another more powerful layer in there when you think of roar as the lion's roar. And just give us that again so it sinks in for me and for our audience listening live and on replay.
Well, the greatest path to happiness and success is when you're strong in your ability to understand compassionately someone else's refusal to engage more with you for a number of reasons, and then you have to have the strength. So roar of the lion is also a sign. When we think of the jungle, when we hear the lion's roar in the jungle, everybody knows the king is around, right?
Yeah.
So he's heard. And the Lion King, the famous show with the cartoon and all of that wonderful, virtuous kind of a kaleidoscope of various issues and challenges that they faced for the small child. But the small lion, the baby lion, just feels as strong as his own mother. When he roars, he's short and small, but he has that same spirit, right? So
Yeah,
being
yeah.
strong is being able to accept come what may and say, okay, it's part of the game. The greatest successes come from your strongest failures, right? You learn. Either you win or you learn. So R.O.A.R is an internalized kind of practice for yourself. It's not roaring to others. Nobody wants to hear you roar, but they want to feel your strength like a lion. That they're impressed with, and they love to be around people who are strong. I love to be around strong people. I mean, I won't lie to you, or I'll help others become stronger. So.
Well, you have done that already this morning, because you've given us a couple of really thought-provoking, insightful perspectives. I opened the show talking about ABCs and the death of a salesman, always be closing, and you turned ABC into always be connecting. Powerful, because that goes to R.O.A.R, right? Return on authentic relationships, servant leadership.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I'm happy that I can help anyone. I mean, we all need to help each other out.
The other value statement that you've shared, and I think all the salespeople listening, and all people listening, actually, it's not just salespeople, because Dan Pink wrote a book 15 years ago that said to sell is human.
That's right.
So we all do it, whether, on the data sheet you put salesperson, if you're a mom trying to get a 13-year-old to do what you want, you're selling an idea.
Oh, yes.
And your ability to get that done is evidence of your ability to have internalized selling. And selling, sometimes it's just storytelling, and telling the right story can cause someone to take action. The other thing that ABC on the left and then on the right, I think, is even perhaps more powerful, because it's about salespeople often, take a big jolt of espresso. They sit down near their phone and they start dialing for dollars, and they know they're going to get rejection, but they're like, I'm going to stick with it. And you say, no. And you approach it that way. You're approaching it all wrong. And the metaphor that you shared with the doctor's office, when the doctor says, I've given you this medication, you're responding to it very well. And when you're having a reaction to it, they prescribe a new medication. So when you sit down at that chair and you grab your phone and you start dialing, don't think of it as a reaction. Well, you explain it better than I do. Explain that for us one more time.
Well, I really became cognizant of that in 1986, when I had been a manager in a call center selling office supplies. And I knew that. Now, contextually, you have to remember, back in the 80s, everybody had a phone. And that's all they had.
That's right. They didn't have these.
Nothing. It was just a phone. That was the only medium of communication. Nothing else. Paper, and printers, what do you call calculators with.
I've got a relic from the 1980s, a clipboard.
Right. Exactly. So that's the only thing I had. So I said I had to maximize, and obviously we had a lot of practice, because a lot of people answered, because everybody only had that. Yeah. Everybody answered the phone, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to practice a lot, and my objectives was, because I said I have a goal, is I would put my watch, and I would put it in front of me. I didn't have a timer. I didn't have any of those electronic things to stopwatch in those days. And I would put it, and I would try to connect with that person, authentically in 10 seconds. I needed to get that person to engage with me, in an effective way. And effective is by the voice. The quality of the voice could tell me a lot, give me some cues as to whether or not there was a good connection. So I always had that kind of top of mind consciousness. I got to connect quickly with that person within 5 to 10 to 8, 15 seconds, but mostly 10. So, and I would watch the tick, 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 and that's the focus. Once I got that, the rest was easier. Didn't say it was easy, because nothing is easy that's worthwhile in life, but it was easier.
Yeah.
So I became, and I continued my career, my work, and different things. And then when I back to prospecting, and then I had to do C-suite. Well, I chose to do C-suite because I only got hired, as a transient or on a contract vice president, and I would set up the department and get some processes and flowing. But I would be essentially generating the leads. And I went back to that thing that I had done, so what you do in your early life will carry with you and enrich you later on. You'll be able to go back to it. Yeah. So try all kinds of things because they can all enrich you. And we can talk about all the things that you and I have done peripherally that also enrich us as business people and consultants and whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Becoming aware of connecting with people, in the first few seconds to really get that emotional kind of spark to at least say, hey, because people are listening to see if they can trust you. That's what they're really doing. And executives, even more so. So once you have the foundational kind of, trust, you operate at that speed, a speed of trust. And then you're able to engage and then you have to craft your narrative and nail your narrative correctly to make sense that matters to them. It's all about them, right? It's not about us. Yeah. But I think that's probably the one thing is I was, cold calling to sell transactionally in those days in the 80s, 90s. But it carried over, because when it's not a immediate sale that you have to make in a kind of C-suite, it's about connecting. It's about selling the virtues that you sound like a person that's worthy of being heard. You sound competent. I heard that from a book.
You sound like you're worth listening to.
Sorry?
I said you sound like, when you sound on the phone, like this is somebody worth listening to, somebody investing some time to listen to, then you get the time from that executive for that conversation.
Correct.
And I think then preparation sounds like it's a big part of the approach. Because you mentioned that if you only have 9 seconds, and that's kind of the attention span of a goldfish, right? To get the attention of the person you're trying to reach, to have a conversation, to discover if they're struggling with the kind of problems that you solve. And that exchange doesn't happen on the fly. It happens best when you have prepared to understand it's a man, it's not a woman. It's a woman, it's not a man, and she's a VP, not a director. And she has a span of control at this big, and I can see where she's been and what she's done. And maybe there's something in there that I can, in that 9 seconds, serve something up to her that shows that I've done the work to understand who she is and I'm here to help.
Well, actually, in the first 9 seconds, you can't say much except connect with them so they want to hear. And so what I do in that 9-10 seconds is I mention the person's name 3 times. I'll do an example with you, okay?
Okay.
So you answer the phone and, I want to be the person reaching out to Mr. Jones.
Hello?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
R. Jones?
Oh, absolutely, yes. This is R.
Hi, Mr. Jones. This is Denis from Lotus Communications. How have you been, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Denis.
Good. That's it.
That
Not
was
very complicated.
Not very complicated.
But it's hard for people to make it simple because they have a lot of things brewing inside of them to come to that place. It's like an actor, De Niro, Pacino, all these great actors, that moment, that stellar moment in a scene, where they have to look at the person with a certain vocal intonation or inflection to make it a powerful moment. I remember, I'll give you an example, when Pacino in Godfather sits and repents himself at the Vatican with someone about all the people he's killed, his own brother, and how he felt, and he looked at the person and everything was coming up. I can just, you could feel in his face, right, how he felt. Or when his daughter, when he found on the staircase, when his daughter was shot, because and the trajectory of the gun of that hidden priest, the assassin that shot, was going to shoot at him, but shot his own daughter. and he lost it, and his face went up yelling in the air, and he just broke. And at that point, he was no longer the same man. He lost everything. His daughter died. So he lost everything that was dear to him. So those scenes, those moments, same thing when you call someone, make sure that it's an Al Pacino moment, and calmly, they will go, oh, this is different. He's calm. He's like me. Or I liked it. Like when we have an issue with someone, what's the best suggestion people give us? Let's sit down and talk about it. Why? Because sitting down calms you down. So calm, competent professionals. That's a way you communicate to people.
Just as I expected, in about 15 minutes, you've dropped 3 things that we all can think or do to help us achieve more in the craft of selling something.
Great.
And I appreciate you for that. And to everybody listening live or in replay, weeks ago when I had that one-on-one with Denis and discovered the depth of his experience and his temperament and his karma.
My temperament should tell you something else.
And I said, I'm starting a show, and you have so much knowledge to share, and your perspective is so what's needed now, that I committed Denis to being an occasional guest, and he said sure. So to keep him committed to that, I'm not going to keep him on for an hour and a half, because I know we could just go and have a really in-depth conversation, but we're going to have Denis to come back into the Story Cafe. Maybe the next time we'll talk about some of the stories that he has about his achievements as a professional racquetball player or cyclist, or some of the things that I'm fascinated with in his avocation as I guess we call it a dedication, but I'll use another term, as a hobby. He just occasionally walks into the gym and throws some heavy weights on and lifts almost 400 pounds just for fun.
Well, actually, there's a reason why I do it. If you really, really quickly, parenthetically, it's to become strong and muscle when I get older, because I'm scared of getting weak and frail. And that's the typical 40 years, 50 years and over person. They're, obese. They have all kinds of what they call the sick aging phenotype. And I've devoted my life to be healthy and strong in my late 80s, 90s, and beyond. So if I'm lucky enough to get to that, but I do weight training now to build muscle and lift heavy to be physically strong.
Well, and because we're in the Story Cafe and I'm the chief story architect here in the cafe, when I think of Denis lifting 390 pounds, deadlifting it, and in one of our conversations, he showed me a video, and he walked me through the mechanics of lifting that much weight. And there's several metaphors for how we treat anything in life in the art and practice of lifting, deadlifting. And in our show today, here in the Story Cafe, as we talked about sales, we talked about think of response, not reaction. Think of connecting, not closing. Think of return on authentic relationship, and think of the lion, right? Be strong. There's a lot of value in a lot of the experiences that Denis has had that can be translated into helping us become better salespeople. But the deadlifting, and we'll have a show where we show you this video that really moved me. The 3 things that I just mentioned are, we internalize these things, we become better at selling anything, because it's the approach that we use. And when Denis deadlifts, he said, Art, I do this and I do this, but in order for the lever to lift properly, I have to fill my chest cavity with air, because then it's like a pulley. It just works better. And for me, I saw the story in that was that it's an inside out practice, right? You can't lift almost 400 pounds without assuring that everything on the inside is working to get that weight off the ground. And when we're thinking of making our $400,000 quota for this quarter, it's an inside out practice. You work on the inside to assure that when you are being a servant leader in your sales craft on the outside, that you do it well. And you'll lift that quota every week, every month, every quarter. And you'll find that you'll find more success in your sales career. If you do like Denis Champagne, you work from the inside out. So I just want to say that, you know, we're coming to the close of our time in the Story Cafe with Denis today, but he's coming back. I'm going to twist his arm because he has so much more to share with you. And hopefully you'll be back here in the Story Cafe as well. My guest, Denis Champagne, is an amazing man. We're going to go deep over the coming weeks and months. Join us. It'll be fun because he's got great stories to tell.
Well, a tribute to you as well, Art, because, you know, it takes one to get to know one. Remember that.
Well, thank you. I'm honored. I am honored. So everybody listening live and on replay, my name is Art Jones. My guest is Denis Champagne. We're two sales guys talking with bald heads to boot. So we're more similar than different in many ways.
Yes.
And we hope you join us for these conversations as we talk about ROI and R.O.A.R, R.O.A.R, to help you accomplish more. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. And until next time, bye for now.